What's going on, my fellow giallo nerds and geeks? Yes, it's me, the Black Glove Killer again, and I've brought a new stack of giallo films for the marshals to add to their little giallo ranking. Bill has asked me here today to just explain to you what exactly a giallo film is. Now, if you're watching this silly YouTube video that he does, I don't know why you wouldn't know what it is, but if you're new here, I'll explain it for you. A genre of Italian thriller or horror film, typically involving a murder mystery, and it's characterized by graphic violence, eroticism, an atmospheric, sometimes dreamlike blend of suspense and horror elements, and often a prominent, intense music score. And more often than not, your antagonist is me, the Black Glove Killer. While I'm retired, I like to bring all these movies to Bill and Vicky's attention just so they could see my exploits put to celluloid. Now, let's get to Bill and see where these end up on their silly giallo ranking. Thank you, Mr. Black Gloved Killer, once again. And what he neglected to say in his little intro here is that we've been doing these videos for a long time now, and if you want to see how we ended up on our current ranking tier list, I will leave all the links to those in the description down below, and if this is your first time here, please subscribe to the channel if you're into this kind of stuff. The first film we're going to be adding to our tier list today is Lucio Fulci's A Lizard in a Woman's Skin. The potentially unhinged daughter of a British politician is accused of killing her hedonistic neighbor after she witnesses the murder in a dream. Now, this one is totally out of character for Lucio Fulci. It stars Florinda Bolkan, the giallo horror sweetheart of the 70s. It's very trippy, very psychedelic. It's almost like an acid trip of a film. It's almost like Fulci at his most visually stunning, in my opinion. It involves like this woman who's having these dreams about her neighbor and like sleeping with her neighbor. Very hippie, sex cultish, but like the visuals are insane. Like it's almost like you're having an acid trip while you're watching it. There's also like her husband who might be cheating on her, and like, does he have this conspiracy to set her up for the murder of the neighbor? Does he have these like crazed hippies coming after her to kill her? Or is this all in this woman's head? Is she going crazy? It's nuts. It's kind of like almost like a David Lynch movie that Fulci put together here. It is very fun to watch. There's some great special effects in here. There's like even this scene where there's like this laboratory where they're experimenting on dogs and like they have all their guts poured out. And it almost got Lucio Fulci arrested because it looks so real, and he had to prove that, hey, it's just all special effects to not go to prison. You get your typical Fulci stuff in here. You'll get your eye zooms, you'll get your graphic violence, and you also have an awesome score by Ennio Morricone, so you know it's going to be great and very atmospheric. This one, like I said, is very trippy. You got your typical red herrings and stuff that are commonplace in giallo films in this one. Because it is so much fun, it's got a great score, and it's just visually striking. And, you know, the ending will leave you being like, holy shit, and just like following along, really caring about the characters. This one is going to go in our good tier, and I highly recommend checking this one out. In my opinion, this might be Lucio Fulci's best giallo film. At least his most visually striking, that is for sure. And next up on our list, we've got You'll Die at Midnight. A man becomes aware that his wife has been having an affair, resulting in a violent argument. Shortly afterward, she is murdered, and he becomes the chief suspect. This one is directed by Lamberto Bava, who of course is a storied director in horror films and giallo films. He did Delirium, he did Demons, he did A Blade in the Dark. This one, because it's made for TV, it seems relatively tame, and it's kind of like lacking violence and any kind of like really striking gore that Bava's typically known for, but it's still a lot of fun. It's got the score by Claudio Simonetti, so you know that's going to be very pleasing to the ears. He, of course, does all like Argento's scores most of the time. This film is like super interesting for a TV giallo in my opinion. There's like a therapist of the husband that is like trying to tell him everything's gonna be okay, but at the same time she did her thesis in college on like this famed serial killer, and as it turns out, the guy that's going around killing all these people has the face of the serial killer, but he is dead. So like, how is this possible? Is he back from the grave? Like, is someone wearing a mask? It's very fun to follow along. There's lots of red herrings, lots of like, who the hell is doing this? There's a lot of cool chases through museums. There's even like this chase through this seaside town that oddly enough looks so reminiscent of the chase sequence on the beach in Body Double. And I can't help but wonder if Bava like saw Body Double and was inspired to like be like, oh, I want to do a chase sequence like that too. And this one's fun because it's got like your typical black glove killer, but you do kind of like have an idea at least what he looks like. But the whodunit nature of this one is so much fun. It's like, is it the husband? Who is it? Is it the cop that doesn't know what's going on? Is it the therapist? It is. It has a great ending, even though you can kind of figure out who the killer is almost halfway through the movie once you start like going through the museum and like the different offices and stuff. But it's a lot of fun getting there. And for a TV movie, this was fantastic. I think it needs a little bit more gore, a little bit more violence to kind of like propel it into the upper echelon, and it needs to be a little bit less predictable, but it's very slasher meets giallo. This one is gonna go in the meh tier for us. I would very happily put this in like the good tier, or hell, even like the top tier, if there's like an uncut version of this, I'd love to see it, and that would definitely propel it. And next up on our list is Off Balance, aka Phantom of Death. This one is directed by Ruggero Deodato, who you'll know from infamy for directing Cannibal Holocaust. In Italy, a famous piano player suffering from the progeria genetic disease becomes distraught and goes on a mad killing spree, prompting a police inspector to investigate. Now, if you don't know what progeria is, it's like almost like a rapidly aging disease where like you just, you could be 30 years old and you end up looking like you're 70. It's insane, and it's actually like a real disease. Now, like I said, this one is directed by Ruggero Deodato. He actually, in watching this bonus features, hates this film. He didn't agree with the casting choices. He thought maybe Sergio Martino should direct this because Sergio Martino's cousin was the producer. But the cast in this movie, despite Deodato not liking it, I think is awesome. The main antagonist in the movie is played by Michael York, which if you're my age or, of the same generation, you'll remember him as playing Basil in the Austin Powers movies. But he is the guy who is suffering from progeria, and he is just rapidly aging, looking like a grotesque monster throughout the film, and at times he's wearing this like white blank mask while he's going around killing people on his mad spree. And you also get Donald Pleasance as the main police investigator in this movie. It is great. There's moments of him almost acting like a crazed Dr. Loomis while he's trying to figure out who the killer is. It is wonderful. And of course, you get the lovely Edwige Fenech.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
She essentially plays like his like love interest, and he disappears for a while, but she has become pregnant with his baby. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know he is suffering from this disease and killing all these people. One thing I will say about this film is that it has great kills. There is even a moment where a woman is at like a train station that has like a nod to Argento almost. A woman is like stabbed and her body is just gushing blood as it goes through the window. Very violent and mean-spirited. Like Michael York becomes crazed. He starts like taunting the police. It is gnarly. And it's a very cool concept of like knowing who the killer is halfway through the movie, because at first you don't know it's him doing the killing, but eventually you figure it out. And watching him just like become this like animal crazed person killing all these people is insane. But at the same time, you almost feel bad for him because he's goes from being this famous piano player to like this hideous monster that no one recognizes. Just like a hideous chud of a man. So he's just angry about it. Realistically, this one is just plain good. There's lots of great makeup effects. very interesting characters, and it's always fun to see American actors kind of like popping up in this subgenre of Italian film for me. But it's great because of all that stuff. This one is going to end up in our good tier. This one I highly recommend, as it landed in our good tier, and holy crap, what a ride. And just, hell, you get to see Donald Pleasance, Edwige, Fenech, and Michael York in a giallo film. And this next group of films comes courtesy of the folks at Vinegar Syndrome with their Forgotten Gialli Volume 7. Now, if you're familiar with these box sets they've been putting out, not all of them have been great. There's been some clunkers in some of these box sets, but I will say that next to Volume 4, this new one, Volume 7, has some of the best films I've seen from the genre that they've put out on these sets, so highly recommend checking out all the films within Volume 7. The first film that we checked out from that box set is Mystere, aka Dagger Eyes. Assassins are after a prostitute who has come into possession of a cigarette lighter that, unbeknownst to her, contains the film negatives that show a politician's assassination. Now, she comes in possession of this lighter because her and another hooker get this John, and one of the hookers steals the lighter, but they don't know that like there's these photo negatives of the assassination of this political guy within the lighter. So all of a sudden, all these assassins start coming after them and start killing all these prostitutes trying to get the lighter so that way their conspiracy can't be told to the world. This one to me is very fun because it almost feels like a James Bond spy thriller meets giallo. And even the star, Mystere herself, played by Karl she played a Bond girl in For Your Eyes Only. So talk about brutal irony. It's like a giallo James Bond movie starring an actual Bond girl. It's like an espionage, political, government, cover-up, crooked cop story, which is a lot of fun. And our main protagonist in this one, Mystere, is helped by an American cop that isn't tied to the corruption. But it's really fun because it just like really shows like a true mystery. Like, how deep does this conspiracy really go? Now, the assassins are of course like crooked cops or like hired hitmen, but there are some cool killers in this one. Like, one of the killers is using this like knife thing that you can see on the cover here. It's like a cane, but at the bottom like a knife comes popping out of it. And it's like, it's funny that I describe this as like a kind of James Bond giallo because realistically, like, this cane thing is something that Q would have made for James Bond as like one of his hidden gadgets, man. It's awesome.
No.
Now, this one doesn't have like a lot of violence or a lot of gore in it, but it is action-packed. There's lots of twists and turns. It's just like a lot of fun, and like you never see like where all this stuff is coming from. Like, hell, one of like the main assassins dies halfway through the movie, and you're like, how is this movie not over yet? Like, how deep can this conspiracy go? As it starts to unravel, it's just so entertaining getting there. I mean, even the ending feels like the ending of a James Bond film, as like people are like sailing off into the sunset together, like cop gets the girl, if you will. Giallo genre purists probably won't really like this because it really feels more like a spy thriller espionage film than a giallo, but because I love, like, you know, James Bond films and espionage films in general, I really love this. It's almost like the combining of two of my favorite genres of film. So to me, it is perfect, and I am going to throw it in the good tier. Giallo purists might put it a little lower on their list, but because of all those reasons and just like a really fun, action-packed, like action spy thriller giallo, I loved it. And next in the box set is Obsession, A Taste for Fear. In the not-so-distant future, a cop is assigned to catch a serial killer who is murdering his way through Rome's model and sexual underground. A giallo set in like an almost futuristic world is a great concept. I just think the reason I kind of didn't like this one so much is that the future is kind of half-assed. Like, a lot of this stuff takes place on like photo sets, which is, you know, there's no shortage of those films in the giallo genre, but like there's nothing about it that screams futuristic to me, but it's still a great concept and kind of a fun movie. It's funny because like the future in this film is just like a bunch of like almost rich people clubs where people dress like mods, and like the main actress's car in this, like, it's supposed to be futuristic, but it really just looks like a golf cart. And for some reason, like, they're still shooting like with like film cameras and like video equipment. I mean, granted, you can't predict the future. Like, obviously, a lot of that stuff is almost, like, obsolete and very different these days. But, I don't know. It could have been done in a much different way. And like I said, like, the model thing and the photography studio is commonplace for Giallo locations. And, like, there is the cool addition of the killer that is going around killing all these models and, like, people in this sexual underground. He's videotaping the murders, and it's almost like very Videodrome-esque, which is a cool addition to the Giallo genre because it's not something we see all that often. I think my main problem, aside from, like, the future not being that futuristic, is that there's, like, a lot of weird, unlikable characters in this movie. Our lead protagonist is this famous photographer who is, like, realistically just a bitch. She has, like, models and assistants who are essentially, like, her slaves, like, doing her bidding and, like, essentially just, like, working for her or, like, sleeping with her. And it's just like, God, she's so mean to you guys. Why are you, like, working for this woman? And she has, like, this ex-husband who, like, makes almost, like, futuristic, weird, hedonistic pornos. It's just very bizarre. And, like, granted, there's a lot of bizarro stuff in Giallo cinema. This one just was like, I was like, what the hell is this guy's deal? Is he, like, smoking opium and making pornos? What the hell is this? The main inspector in this film is this cop who you're not sure if he's, like, in love with our lead protagonist or he just wants to fuck her over. It's so weird. He, like, teases her and it's like, yo, help her out, or hell, fuck her. It just doesn't make sense to me. The thing about all these, like, bizarro characters in this film, it leaves it open to lots of red herrings to the murder mystery. You're like, well, it could be any number of these people because they're all bastards. The reveal is kind of lackluster in my opinion. It's just been done before. I don't want to spoil it too much, but it ends up being this, like, almost androgynous killer that is in our famous photographer's life. Cool ending, I guess, but it could have been any number of people, and the reveal of it being this person just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm like, alright. Again, this one could have been great with the whole taking place in the future aspect, but I think the budget kind of held it back, and it's just not futuristic enough, and I think the characters are just too unlikable. So this one is going to go in our woof tier. Granted, I think over time, if I watch this a little more, it could go a little higher on my list, and those, like, Videodrome elements are a lot of fun. And next up in this box set was Sweets from a Stranger. A serial killer is terrifying the prostitutes in a big Italian city. After a few barbaric murders, 4 prostitutes decide to unite and try to defend themselves. The police and all the other prostitutes agree with the quartet, and the hunt for the serial killer is on. This movie is kind of insane. You have your prototypical giallo killer, black glove, razor-wielding guy who's slicing up these prostitutes. Nothing new there. But what was cool about this movie is you see it from a different angle. You see it from the angle of the hookers that are being murdered and how they need to come together to kind of stop this from happening because the cops aren't doing anything to help them. The people in the Italian city aren't helping them. They're just like, sure, like, let them kill all the prostitutes. We need that element from our city gone. The hookers essentially start this, like, hooker union. It's really funny, but at the same time, it's, like, surprisingly very heartfelt. Like, you really care about these, like, prostitutes. Like I said, you have your classic Giallo style killer, but you have a lot of likable characters, which is what sets this one apart. I never thought I'd feel for so many of these, like, prostitutes, you know? It's like, damn, like, yeah, unionize, babes. Get together and stop this fucking dude. Another reason why you, like, kind of feel for them is that, like, no one is helping them. None of the cops, none of the townsfolk. So it's just like you're rooting alongside them. I understand their troubles, you know? They may be prostitutes, but they're just trying to get by. They're having a hard time, and now someone's killing them. Now, this movie is a bit slow, in my opinion, but it's worth it for the killer reveal. Now, the reveal is a doozy because it's just super original. It's something that you don't really see coming, in my opinion. You know, there's lots of people it could be, lots of red herrings in Giallo fashion, you know, but it ends up being someone like, holy shit. All I will say is, raise your kids right. And, like, the ending reveal is also filled with a lot of, like, Brian De Palma-esque shots, like, through mirrors, and it becomes very trippy, very psychedelic. Even though this one isn't very violent and the kills aren't super gory, there are some intense moments and, like, a lot of sleazy moments, you know, dealing with the prostitutes and all. This one, because of like its originality and just like very interesting, heartfelt characters and storyline and crazy ending reveal, this one is going in the good tier. I originally struggled with putting this one in the meh tier at first, but in talking with Vicky, she loved this movie, and I gotta say, I really did too. It's one of the Giallo movies that like kind of sticks with you after you watch it, especially after that reveal, man. You're just like, holy shit, damn. But alright guys, that is our list for this new Giallo tier ranking video. Thank you to our good friend the Black Glove Killer for coming by and bringing us some more movies to rate of his wonderful exploits in Giallo cinema. We look forward to watching new ones and adding to this list all the time. There are so many more we need to watch. Thank you always for watching these videos, you guys. We love you, and until the next video, adios, or should I say ciao. Fuck me.